Here we see that the disciples, they've gone with Jesus to this place, and it says that they were in this remote place, and Jesus is teaching this group of people. This group of people saw Jesus coming, they ran out, and there's about 5,000 of them, and Jesus talks to them for 3 days. Now, I go over 30 minutes, and I get backlash. Jesus is talking to these people for 3 days. Sharing the gospel with them, sharing with them for 3 days. They get hungry, because who would not be hungry after 3 days? They get hungry, and they kind of have a little bit of a problem come about, and that's what we're going to look at in Mark chapter 6, verse 34. It says, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. What I love about Jesus is that he was always more concerned with what he could give to other people than what he could get from them. He was always more concerned with what he could give than what he could get. A problem today in Christianity and just in the world in general is that we're more focused on what we can get from other people than from what we can give to other people. But if we're going to live like Jesus, if we're going to live the way that Jesus lived, then it requires us to be more concerned with what can I give to somebody else than what can I take from them. Jesus looks at this group of people and he says, listen, I'm going to have compassion on them. By this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, you give them something to eat. Watch this. The disciples saw a need, and the first thing they did was want to have everybody else go and try to solve it themselves. They saw a need, and they wanted to send everybody else to the surrounding areas. They're like, listen, Jesus, these people are hungry. We're in this remote place. They need food. Send them away so they can get something to eat. And Jesus said, no, you give them something to eat. Because when you're a follower of Jesus, it's not about everybody else having to figure it out for themselves. It's about allowing Jesus to work through you to help show them the answer, to help show them what it is that you know that they may not know. Jesus is like, no, you give them something to eat. They're focused on what everybody else could get, and Jesus was focused on what they had. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have, he asked. Go and see. And when they found out, they said 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the loaves. Remember that. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them, and they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. And the number of men who had eaten that day were 5,000. 5,000. Now, the disciples are kind of low-key freaking out in Mark chapter 6, right? They're like, Jesus, we don't know what to do. There's these people, they need food. They're freaking out. And who can blame them? Have you ever been around somebody who was hangry? How many of you would be honest here today and say, hey, I've had a time when I was hangry? Come on, I've had a time. All the men better raise their hand for sure. I've had a time when I was hangry. I am this way. I may be skinny, but if I'm hungry, I want to eat right now. And if I don't like the food that I'm given, then I'm even more mad. I think I'd rather not be given food than be given nasty food. But the disciples are like, these people are hangry. Now imagine yourself hangry and multiply that by 5,000. Nobody wants to upset a hangry person. Nobody wants to make somebody who's hangry more mad. So they're like, they come to Jesus and they're like, Jesus, we need you to do something. And Jesus says, you give them something to eat. And they're like looking at him, and I just got to picture this, that in their minds are thinking, you're the one that's keeping them here. You're the one that's talking to them. You're the one that if you would just stop talking, they could go and get food. You give them something to eat. But the disciples, they're just like looking at Jesus with this dumbfounded look. And Jesus says, you know what? Bring me what you have. Just like, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for your excuses. I ain't got time for your complaint. Bring me what you have. So they bring him the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. It's all that they had. It's all that was left. And Jesus takes it and he looks at it. And I know the disciples, they had to be thinking like, hey man, like Peter, like look at this. This is crazy. Like, Jesus, what's Jesus going to do? 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5,000 people, okay? What's he about to do? And they bring it to him knowing that it's not enough. I think we can all agree that 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish are not enough to feed 5,000 people. They bring it to him knowing that it's not enough. But in that moment, Jesus knew that it was exactly what he needed. They bring it to him, he breaks it, the only thing they had. And I wonder if you've ever felt like all you had to offer was broken. I wonder if you've ever felt like all that you had available was broken. I wonder if you've ever come to Jesus and said, listen, I know that there's some great things in my life that you want to do, and there's people that you want to touch their lives and heal them. You want to do all these things, but Jesus, all I have to offer is broken. It's not enough. And even the little bit that I have, now it's broken. Jesus took it, he broke it, and it multiplied, and they were able to feed the 5,000. You ever just brought something to Jesus and just said, Jesus, my confidence is broken. My peace is broken. My hope is broken. My joy is broken. My heart is broken. God, I want to pour my heart into your church. I want to help reach others for you, but my heart is broken. It's broken. And it can't be enough. Surely this isn't enough to do what Jesus said that he's going to do. But I want to talk to you this morning on that subject. I want to talk to you on the subject, it looks broken. It looks broken. Let's pray together. God, I thank you for today, and I just thank you that we have the opportunity to be here today in person. We have the opportunity to be here online. Lord, I pray that you'd be with those of us who purposely are here or tuned in, and those who accidentally came across it. I pray that you would speak to all of our lives equally. Show us things that we need to hear, Lord. Help us to apply it to our lives, what is spoken. Help each and every person not to see or hear from me, but to see and hear from you. And I thank you for it in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. Now, I think that we can all agree on something. I know that, we live in a world where nobody agrees on everything, but there is something that I think we can all agree on, and that is that 2020 has been a weird year. Right? I think we can all agree that 2020 has been a weird year. But by far, the strangest thing that I have seen is not COVID-19. It's not the murder hornets. It's not the election and everything. It's the war on toilet paper. Have you noticed this? Like the war on toilet paper. How do we have a shortage of toilet paper? And twice in 1 year. Twice in 1 year. I don't understand it. It blows my mind. And listen, I have a lot of grace and I show a lot of love to everybody. But if you are one of the ones who has been hoarding all the toilet paper, please do not let me know. Please don't let me know, because we are not friends right now. Right? If you've been hoarding all the TP, we are not friends. I don't want to know about it because I love everyone right now, showing grace to everyone. But if I find out that you're the one who's been going to the Loganville Walmart and just wiping the shelf clean, I don't want to know about it. Because I don't understand it. Like I've asked people, I've tried to talk to people that I know are hoarding some toilet paper. They're not friends of mine, it's just acquaintances that I know. We were friends, we're not now. But I've asked them, I'm like, listen, what's the deal? They can't explain it to me. They don't even know. They're like, I don't know. I just saw somebody else grabbing toilet paper and I thought I needed to grab toilet paper. And it just became a thing. And I understood initially, right, in March and April, I understood the shortage of a lot of the products. I understood the shortage in Clorox wipes, understood the shortage in Lysol, in masks, in gloves, in soap. Apparently people didn't use soap until this year. Hand sanitizer. I understood the shortage in all of these things. But I never understood the shortage in toilet paper. And what happened was I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a toilet paper shortage until Nicole texted me when I was at work and I was about to leave, and she said, babe, we're almost out of toilet paper at the house. Can you please go and get some? So I went to Walmart, my most hated place on earth, to get some toilet paper. I walk in, and I look, and the whole shelf is just wiped clean. And I'm like, this has to be a mistake. Right? This is a problem. So I find a sales associate, and I'm like, hey, sir, how you doing? And trying to keep some cheer in 2020. Hey, what's going on? And he just kind of looked at me, and I said, hey, did y'all move the toilet paper? He's like, no. And I said, well, do you have more toilet paper in the back? And he just kind of scoffs and just rolls his eyes. And I'm like, okay. So then he goes over to his buddy, and he's like, I hear him say, this guy just asked if we had more toilet paper. And I'm like, why is this even a thing? What is toilet paper? I had told Nicole, she's like, can you get some toilet paper? I'm like, sure, because how was I supposed to know there wasn't going to be any? I get there, it turns out I lied to her because I come home and I'm like, babe, I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to have to borrow from our parents or something because we ain't got no toilet paper. We are 31 years old and we're borrowing from our parents. Not money. Oh, we're not borrowing money. We're borrowing toilet paper because it's 2020. So I'm like, we're going to have to borrow a roll or something until I can find some somewhere. And it was just so frustrating. And the first time I showed a little grace because COVID-19 was new. We didn't know what to expect. Nobody knew anything. But then 2 weeks ago, I get the same text. Hey, babe, we're almost out of toilet paper. See, people are hoarding the very thing that some people need. You're just taking it to play with during COVID-19. Right, just to play with during quarantine. Some of us actually need the toilet paper. So she texts me, and I go to Walmart again, wiped clean. This is got to be a joke. So then I asked Elder Bradford on the next day. I was like, hey, I know you got to go to Sam's to get some things for the church. If I give you my personal credit card, can you please hook me up with some toilet paper? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Comes back, man, they didn't have no toilet paper. Sam's? Then I asked my parents, y'all go to Costco. Can we please get some toilet paper? They come back from Costco. Sorry, they didn't have no toilet paper. I'm like, this is like a bad dream, right? We're about to start borrowing from the church toilet paper. And so I'm like, this is very, very frustrating. But I told Nicole, I was like, well, listen, I'm going to go home. Before I go home, I'm going to go Kroger. I'm going to get the boys some milk because we're almost out of milk. And when I get in there to go get some milk, something in me just says, hey, check the toilet paper aisle. I'm not going to say it was the Holy Spirit. I think it was just my desperateness. It's not even a word, but I made it one because that's how I felt. And I go and I look on the toilet paper aisle, and there's no toilet paper, but then I see something shining behind some Kleenexes, and I walk and I move some Kleenexes, and someone had hid a 4-pack of toilet paper behind the Kleenex. Like, what they going to do, come back and get it when they need it? Is this on-demand service? So you know what I did? I took the 4-pack of toilet paper. It was single ply, but it's okay. Beggars can't be choosers. We just take what we can. And I grabbed the toilet paper, and I'm walking up to check out, and I see people eyeing me. And I'm looking at them like, I will fight you. Right? Don't even try. I will fight you. And I get there, and I check out. And y'all should be so thankful that I found toilet paper because we almost had a news story, Loganville pastor robs houses of toilet paper because it was just this crazy thing. But I was trying to find toilet paper any way I could. I'm pursuing it. I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm searching here, I'm searching there, and I'm pursuing it, trying to find it. And finally, I found it, and the pursuit was answered. A lot of times in our lives, we're pursuing many different things. We're pursuing love, we're pursuing acceptance, we're pursuing identity. We're pursuing security when we feel insecure. We're pursuing all these things. But the amazing thing is we can look and pursue those things in all these places, but the only way to find an answer to all of those things is when we pursue Jesus. Because Jesus answers pursuit. Jesus answers pursuit. And if you're taking notes, that's the first thing I want you to write down. Verse 34, it said, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Jesus always answers our pursuit. Somebody say always. He always answers our pursuit. It said in verse 32 and 33 that Jesus and his disciples were tired. Because Jesus had been teaching for days. He had already been teaching. The disciples are tired. Jesus is tired. And it says in verse 32 to 33 that they actually went where they were going to rest. Jesus was going there to take a break. You ever been at your wit's end and you just need a moment to rest? What do you do when, if you had children, they start screaming? As soon as you sit down, I need this. It's like, oh. But Jesus said, I see their pursuit. He said, I see them pursuing me. I see them coming after me. There is something about our pursuit. There is something about our praise. There is something about our worship that causes Jesus to stop in his tracks, to stop whatever it is that he's doing and to answer the need, to meet the need. It stops him to say, you know what, I'm going to invest in this. I'm going to pour out into this. And this is why that when it's good, we praise. But when it's bad, we should still pursue him the same way we did when it was good. If 2021 looks like 2020, we should pursue him the same way that we would if 2021 looked different. No matter what it feels like or looks like or sounds like, our pursuit causes Jesus to move. No matter what it looks like, it causes him. If we're at church, we pursue him. If we're at home, we pursue him. If we're at work, we pursue him because he honors our pursuit. He always honors our pursuit. He saw their pursuit and he had compassion on them and then he poured into them. May we never become lazy with our pursuit. May we never become lazy. This is why I got to take a minute. I know everybody's here in person. But those online, I got to tell you, I honor that you get up on Sunday morning and tune in. Because I know that when I'm home on the weekend, the last thing I'm thinking about is all these other things. But the fact that you've been consistent in getting up week in and week out and tuning in online, I think that's commendable. Because it's harder to me to continue pursuit when you're at home than it is when you get up and you get dressed and you look all great and you look all nice and everything's good and you know that you're coming to church. But when you get up and you got the coffee brewing and you got your PJs on and the bed feels comfortable, you don't have an alarm set, it's a lot more difficult to continue in that pursuit. But no matter what situation we're in person, online, quarantine, whatever it is, the pursuit is all that matters. The pursuit, it doesn't matter what your pursuit looks like. It matters that you continue your pursuit, that you do not allow yourself to become lazy in your pursuit. He saw their pursuit, Jesus did, and he had compassion on them, and he pours into them. And this is my favorite thing about Jesus, is that he poured into everyone. Because see, we can get to where we pick and choose who's worth investing in. We can get to where we pick and choose who's worth pouring into. If we like the way they look, if we like the way they act, if we like what we can get from them, then we'll take the time to be with them. Then we'll take the time to invest in them. But Jesus looked at this group of people who had nothing to offer him. Absolutely nothing to offer Jesus. And he looked at them and he had compassion on them. And even though he was tired, he said, you know what? They are worth investing in. They are worth stopping for. They are worth ministering to. It doesn't matter how tired I am. Their pursuit has stopped me and I want to stop for them. He didn't worry about the good ones. He didn't go through and find the ones that hadn't made a mistake. He didn't even look for the ultra spiritual ones. Right? He didn't say, okay, listen, I got y'all 5,000 of y'all. I'm tired. I only got time for about 500. So if you've never messed up, raise your hand. Okay, I got y'all. Now, if you've never done something to your spouse, raise your hand. Okay, now I got you. And I got 800 now. If you've been the best, most devout religious person on the face of the planet, if you're in church every Sunday, if you're going to the tabernacle to pray, if you're reading the word, if you're doing all these things, if you're following all these, then raise your hand. Okay, that's y'all, so that's who I'm going to talk to. No. That's what we like to do, but Jesus said, no, I'm talking to all 5,000. I know that there's some who just left the bar last night. I know that there's some who have done some things that they're not proud of. I know that there's some that have been in prison for unmentionable things, but they're the ones that I want to talk to. Every single one of the 5,000 is worth my time. Every single one is worth my time because their pursuit stopped him. He didn't pick and choose. He didn't stop and say, well, I'm only going to do these. He had compassion on all of them. In other words, Jesus did not pick us because we're good enough. He picked us because he's good enough. He didn't go around and try to find the one that had it all together. He went around and said, listen, I know you don't have it together, but I do, and I'm going to help you get there. He went to all of them. He had compassion on all of them. And the thing about it is, whenever you pursue Jesus, he always answers. He always answers. Answer may not look like what you thought it would look like. It may not be the answer that you wanted. But when you pursue Jesus, he always answers. Always. No matter what, he always answers. But most of the time, he will have you start out by using what you have. I need you to write that down if you're taking notes, is use what you have. It said in verse 36, send the people away. This is the disciples talking. They're like, listen, Jesus, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. There's 5,000. I know Karen. And if Karen don't get the food that she wants and the flavor she wants and the temperature she wants, she's going to be upset. You don't want to mess with that. And Jesus is like, no. I'm not sending them away. He said, they said, go give them something to eat, help them find something to eat in the villages and the countryside. But he answered them, you give them something to eat. You give them something to eat. Now, it's really great to read that in the Bible where he told the disciples, you give them something to eat. But you need to read it as if he's saying it to you. It's great to read it for the disciples, but the same thing he was saying to the disciples is the same thing that he's saying to us today. You give them something to eat. It's not about that. It's about you giving them something to eat, because your miracle is always preceded by something that's already in your possession. Woo. Your miracle is always preceded by something that's already in your possession. Jesus said, you are searching out there for the answer that's already right here. You are searching in everyone else for the answer that I've already provided you. Jesus said, you're trying to get it out there in the countryside and in the villages and in all these places, but the answer is right here. You give them something to eat. Somebody say me. Come on, somebody say me. You give them something to eat. So you're always looking for something else or somebody else to be able to provide the answer. We're always looking over here and over there for the answer in all these places. But Jesus wants someone to hear to know today that it's already in your possession. The miracle is already in your possession. The deliverance is already in your possession. The answer is already in your possession. But truthfully, I believe that most of us know this. Right? Those of us who, if you grew up in church or if you've been following Jesus for any amount of time, you kind of already have this understanding. You know that the answer is already in your possession. And I'm going to go here, even though I was hesitant to, but I'm going to go here anyways because it's Christmas. You can't be mad. But the reality is, I think that many times we willingly ignore that we already have the answer in our possession so that we can have an excuse. We ignore that the answer is already in our possession so that we can continue to have a valid excuse. I said it. Not just you, me. Well, God, I know that I have the potential, but God, if you'd give me more money, then I would have the financial stability I need to actually release my potential. God, I know that you say I can do it, but God, if you would give me a new car, because the car I got right now, when I go out to start it, it's a crapshoot. We don't know. It's a flip of the coin. It might start, it might not start. God, if you gave me a new car, then I would be able to fully unleash my potential. God, if you'd help me not to be so shy, then I would fully unleash my potential. God, if you'd give me a spouse, then I'd have a helpmate and I could unleash my potential. And Jesus is saying, listen, the answer is already there. He's not going to give you more until you use what you have. He's not going to give you more so long as you are sitting on what you already have. And so many of us are just sitting on excuses. We're just sitting on reasons to tell God why we're not doing what we've already known that we can do. Why we're not going to continue. Jesus said the 5 loaves and the 2 fish that you already have is enough to get started with. So often we look at it and we're like, this isn't enough to do it, but Jesus says it's enough to start. And we just decide not to start because we're afraid of failing. We're afraid of what's going to happen if it doesn't work out. We're afraid of what's going to happen if we aren't able to do what he's called us to do. And all he's asking you to do is not the whole thing. He's asking you to start. Because Jesus takes what they have, 5 loaves, 2 fish. He takes what they have. He breaks it and he blesses it. Isn't that amazing? Like they came to Jesus, hey, this is what we got. And Jesus takes what they had and he breaks it. Because Jesus knew it wasn't enough. And many of us would be so much more free in our lives if we would just come to grips and acknowledge, I don't have enough. I don't have enough. We spend our lives trying to get enough, but you'll never have enough. On our own, we will never have enough. We have enough to get started. We will never have enough to do all that God wants to do. But we have enough to bring, to be broken, to get started. But Jesus looks at it, he's like, okay, you're right, this isn't enough. So he breaks it in verse 41, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the loaves. He broke the loaves. Said it's not enough. Here's my problem. I'm just going to be very transparent for a minute. Here's my problem. I want God to multiply the blessings in my life. Anybody who says they don't, they're lying. I want God to multiply the blessings in my life. I just don't want to have to experience the brokenness that precedes the blessing. Yet I find that in my life, it is oftentimes in the brokenness that God's power is made perfect in my weakness. And as I look back over my life, I've started to see and understand that the moments of brokenness were actually moments of blessing. The moments that I thought was the most broken I would ever be were actually the moments to the beginning of a blessing. It was the moments that God broke something in my life that needed to be broken because he said, as long as you have this, you will depend on it, but it's never going to be enough. So I have to break it so that you can begin to depend on me, so that you can know that the answer is in me. The times of brokenness are oftentimes the greatest blessings. Because whenever you have something in your life that God is breaking, it means that you have released it from your possession for him to bless. When you're willing to release it to him, when you're in a moment that feels broken, that feels lost, it means you have released to him what was needed to be released so that he can bless it and multiply it. Many of us look at our broken moments as a curse, when it's actually the beginning of what God is wanting to bless. We have the potential, but it cannot be unleashed until it is first released to him, broken and blessed. The disciples, they brought 5 loaves and 2 fish, but if they would have held on to it, that's all that it was ever going to be. That's all it was ever going to be. And so many of us, we know that we don't have enough to offer. We know that we don't have what it takes to do what God's called us to do. We know that we don't have what it takes on our own to carry out the full vision that he has for our lives. So we just don't even try. But instead, he's saying, if you will release it to me, if you will acknowledge, hey, I don't have it, but God, I know that you do. Release it to me so that it can be broken and blessed. Release it to me so that it can be broken and multiplied. We have the potential, but it has to be released. They'd held on to it the whole time. That's all that it ever would have been, is 5 loaves and 2 fish. And my question to you this morning is, what are you holding on to because you don't think that it's enough? What are you holding on to because you don't think that it could possibly be the answer? What inadequacy are you allowing to stop you from releasing it to God, from turning it over to him? What have you written off as worthless? Because see, what you have written off as worthless is more often than not the very thing that God is wanting to bless. But he's waiting on you to release it to him. They may have told you that you weren't worth anything. You may have told yourself that you weren't worth anything. You may not believe that you're worth anything. But Jesus was just preparing you for what he had prepared for you. And he's waiting on you to acknowledge, hey, this isn't enough. It's not enough. I know this isn't the answer. I know this can't be all there is. I know this can't satisfy all that needs to be satisfied. This isn't enough. And he's waiting on you to release it to him so that it can be broken. He says, if you will release it, I will multiply it. Not just once, but over and over and over and over again. Because see, and this we read about Mark 6 today, but in Mark chapter 8, we see Jesus do almost the exact same thing. Almost the exact same miracle. But in Mark chapter 8, it's with 4,000 people, and it's with 7 loaves of bread. And he does the exact same miracle. He breaks the loaves, he feeds the 4,000, just like he did with the 5,000 in Mark chapter 6. The exact same thing. But later on in Mark 8:17, the disciples hit a struggle. They're having a problem, and they're complaining because they're like, we don't know how to solve this problem. We don't know. Have you ever had a time where you just didn't know? Like you just didn't know. And it's like, I know that God has to have the answer, but I don't know how he has the answer. Like you just don't know. And in Mark 8:17, they're complaining and they're talking about what they're going through. And Jesus gives them a good old-fashioned talking to. You ever had a good old-fashioned talking to from a parent? That's what Jesus does. He sits them down. He's like, listen. Mark 8:17 says, aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many basketfuls of bread did you pick up? 12, they replied. When I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? And they answered, 7. And he said to them, do you still not understand? Sometimes the answer to progress is not something we need to learn, it's something we need to remember. It may look different, but God said, do you not remember the time? Instead of complaining about where you are, why don't you reflect on where you were? Why don't you be thankful that you're not where you were? I don't like where I am, but thank God I'm not where I was. I don't think I've made it far enough, but thank God I'm not where I used to be. If God delivered you then, he will do it now because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. You know that you have the potential inside of you to do the thing that you don't think you can do because you've already seen God use the potential before. You've already seen him show up before. Stop questioning if God can do it and start remembering the times that he already did. When you hit the struggle, don't start to complain about it, but say, God, I remember where I was. I remember how it was. I remember what God already brought me through. He's already brought you so far. The fact that you're still standing here today means he's already brought you so far. The fact that you're still able to be here today means that he's already brought you so far. I might not be all the way there, but I remember the time I didn't think I could get out of it. And I cried out to God and I brought him all that I had to offer. And I said, God, it's not enough, but it's something. Do whatever you can. And I got to where I am today. I shouldn't have been here. Nobody else could have gotten me here. I couldn't have gotten myself here, but God got me here because I was able to turn it over to him, to release it to him, to say, God, do what only you can do. He didn't let my past and my insecurities stop me then. What makes you think he's going to let them stop you now? The provision is in your possession. Somebody say, I have it. The provision is in your possession. The miracle is in your possession. But he's waiting on you to release it to be multiplied. To say, God, my marriage, what I have to give to my marriage is not enough to make it continue to work. God, my children, what I have to give to my children is not enough for me to continue to make it work. God, this year it's wiped me out. And my hope, I don't have enough hope to continue on with the way that it is not enough. God, I'm turning it all over to you. I'm bringing it all over to you because I remember the time before when it wasn't enough. And I remember when it was broken. And I remember looking at it and being like, this broken little mess, there's no way it's enough. And I remember the time that God multiplied that And I know that even if he could do it then, he could do it now. I know that my life might look like a broken mess right now, but he can do the same thing now that he did once before. I know it may not look like I have to offer right now, but he can do the same thing now that he did once before. I know it might look like I can't solve it, but I know God can do the same thing that he did before. I know the potential is inside of me because I've seen him use it before. If you're here this morning, if you would, please stand with me. It looks broken. It doesn't look like it could be enough. But God, I know that if you did it before, I know that you can do it again. Help me to remember. That should be our prayer. God, help me to remember. Help me to remember the times that you made a way where there was no way. Help me to remember the times that I didn't think that I'd be able to, and I did. Help me to remember the times that it seemed like all hope was lost, but you brought me through.